Right. That might have to be set up that way.
Yeah, actually,
No, it's
it's just done.
okay.
It looks like it's setting up, but it's actually done. So, you have to.
It's asking.
Oh.
Mute that.
Warm greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Sutta study group. In case there hasn't been a welcome already, I'm a bit late coming in. We can sit for 10 minutes together before we begin to look at the suttas. So let's relax and settle into the space, and 10 minutes of meditation time to arrive. So we can gently emerge from the meditation. Welcome again, everyone. Big warm welcome to you all. Greetings, venerables at Dhammavihārī. Wonderful to see you all. I'm looking forward to our collaboration as we look at these suttas together.
Greeting Ayya. Greeting Ayya. Namo Buddhaya.
So, dear friends, we have two wonderful teachings today from the Samyutta Nikaya. As one of the venerables pointed out, we have the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, and we have the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta in the Digha Nikaya. In the middle-length discourses and the longer discourses, we have these two very important meditation suttas. But also in the Samyutta Nikaya, the collection of short discourses, there is an entire section on Satipaṭṭhāna, and it's a rich resource for us to really flesh out the understanding of the four Satipaṭṭhānas teaching from the Buddha. The four Satipaṭṭhānas being the four foundations of mindfulness, or the four resorts of mindfulness, as many of you know. The meditation teachings to pay attention to develop mindfulness of the body, Kayanupassana, first foundation, of feelings, Vedanupassana, second foundation, of the chitta, the mind, the heart mind, third foundation of mindfulness, that sort of question, how am I? What's happening here? And the fourth foundation, Dhammānusārī, which is the mind states, or you could say the teachings of the Buddha, or reality, the reality that we experience when we investigate this mind. So these four foundations of mindfulness, it's a very important teaching for guidance for our meditation. And so this Samyutta Nikaya section on Satipaṭṭhāna, two suttas have been chosen for us to look at today to dive into these teachings. So I think am I the one who's screen sharing, venerables?
Yes,
Yep. Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay, that's grand. And so let's begin, friends, by looking at this first sutta, and we'll start reading through together. So here we go. This is called Bhikkhu Sutta, a monk. Can you all see the... Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
See if I can make that a bit bigger. Okay. So let's begin. This is translation from Bhante Sujato. We have the English and we also have the Pali. So do look at both. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Then a mendicant went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down at one side and said to him, "Sir, may the Buddha please teach me the Dharma in brief. When I've heard it, I'll live alone, withdrawn, diligent, keen, and resolute." So just to pause here, this is a very common introduction to a sutta. Very often, people would come and ask the Buddha to give them a pithy, a short, a concise teaching on Dharma, so that they could go away and practice in just this way. So this is a fairly frequent kind of introduction to a sutta, and then something rather unusual happens next, as you'll see. So the Buddha responds by saying, "This is exactly how some foolish people ask me for something. But when the teaching has been explained, they think only of following me around. So this is rather shocking, actually. The Buddha isn't kind of compassionately giving a direct teaching to this particular monastic. He's actually rebuking him. So we don't exactly know why that would be, but we can appreciate there's probably some kind of backstory. Reading between the lines, we can assume that this monk has been perhaps following the Buddha around and not really practicing for liberation. Who knows? But for some reason, this monk is, as we say in English, or maybe also in American, in the doghouse. He's getting, first of all, a bit of a sharp rebuke from the Buddha. How, in a way, imagine getting a rebuke from the Buddha. How shocking. But perhaps in this case, the Buddha was always, of course, compassionate. Perhaps in this case, this was a helpful shock to the system to enable him to actually change and really hear what comes next. So I'd like to stop here, stop talking myself, and invite any comments at this point. First of all, to invite the Venerables, if you'd like to come in with anything, or anybody else has any comments or questions at this point. Okay, well, we've only just begun, haven't we? So let's continue, come back to the sutta and see what happens next. So this poor monastic, having been rebuked by the Buddha, is not put off. He continues. He's very keen to understand how to practice at this point. How wonderful. He says, "Sir, may the Buddha please teach me the Dharma in brief. May the Holy One teach me the Dharma in brief. Hopefully, I can understand the meaning of what the Buddha says. Hopefully, I can be an heir of the Buddha's teaching." So now he's really showing his interest and wish to understand the Dharma, and the Buddha relents and starts to teach him here. The Buddha says, "Well then, mendicant, you should purify the starting point of skillful qualities." What is the starting point of skillful qualities? Well purified ethics and correct view. Here we see Silansha Sui Sudang. Sui Sudang. Suda's purity, Sui well purified, Sila. Ethics or virtue, practice of the precepts, right living, harmless living. And correct view, Ditti cha ujuka, means uju is straight, and ka means something that is made straight. The view, Ditti, that is made straight, correct view. So this is the starting point of skillful qualities, purifying virtue, purifying our conduct, and straightening of the view, getting on the straight path, right view. And the Buddha goes on, when your ethics are well purified and your view is correct, you should then develop the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, the 4 Satipaṭṭhānas, Cattaro Satipaṭṭhāne. You should develop these 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation in 3 ways, depending upon and grounded in ethics. So there we are. This is the particular teaching for this particular monastic, the pithy, short, direct teaching. Now, when the Buddha was asked to give a short teaching, he gave many different versions of the short teaching. So this is the one that is most appropriate, I'm sure, for this particular person. So there we have it. What comes first? Virtue, ethics, living a harmless life. I think we could just have a little moment to consider this. First the ethics, then the right view, and then the development through meditation, through observing the four Satipaṭṭhāna. Any comments from the Venerables, first of all? Would you like to come in at all at this point with any reflections or comments? No pressure whatsoever, just if you're moved to speak.
Just noticing that so many non-monastic lay meditation groups tend not to focus on sila, tend to jump right into meditation without putting any importance on sila or even mentioning the value of it.
Sadhu, absolutely. That's such an important point. Thank you, Venerable Dhammavara. Isn't it the case, friends, that very often there is a kind of wish to jump into the meditation? I know very well, because I was like that myself. I just wanted to meditate. I wasn't interested in, the Buddha's teachings per se, but for some reason, there was this interest in finding out what's going on here. And for many Westerners, there isn't a grounding, is there, in Buddhism, in the Buddhist culture. And so it's often that this way in which people are introduced to Buddhism is through meditation retreats. Go on a retreat, learn to meditate. And so these steps, in a way, are not always very clear for us. Cynthia.
Hello. I noticed that everyone wants to learn mindfulness, and they've taken Bhante Gunaratana's work and turned it into something very westernized. And I'm not sure that it is always a good tweak that they've done to Bhanteji's work.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Cynthia. Again, it's really interesting, isn't it? If we strip away path aspects, we have from the Buddha, don't we, the Eightfold Path with all these 8 factors, 3 of them, the first 3, of course, being around conduct, how we speak, how we act, and the 3 more around mental development, you could say, concentration or samadhi, right effort, and what's the other one, Venerables? Right mindfulness. I was forgetting, so I needed to ask for help, but it came to me. Right mindfulness. So mindfulness, concentration or samadhi or stillness and effort. And then the right view aspects, the wisdom aspects, right? The view and the intention. And so in this sutta, the Buddha's actually pointing to, well, in terms of the Eightfold Path, actually virtue is the most important thing. So right speech, right action, right livelihood. This has to come first. So this sutta is actually really helpful in this regard, isn't it? It's telling us we can't strip these away. We can't just focus on mindfulness, one path factor, by the way, or even mindfulness combined with samadhi and right effort. We can't just focus on that. No, first virtue, first sila. So those 3 path aspects. And then actually in this sutta, the Buddha is saying what's most important next is right view. Right view, right intention comes next. And only then for this particular monk, but we could say probably for many of us, this is a correct approach, maybe even for all of us, because in so many suttas, the Buddha emphasizes the fact that we can't really practice until we have a heart that's free from agitation caused by harmful action, agitation caused by remorse, Even if we don't feel remorse when we harm and hurt ourselves or others, we certainly have it in the system. It's agitating for the heart. So yes, absolutely, Cynthia and Venerable Dhammavara, it's very important to notice where there's a de-emphasis on certain aspects of the path, the Eightfold Path, where there's an imbalance in how we're encouraged to practice. And we need to make good, we need to consider all the path factors. And perhaps let's consider starting with virtue. There's always ways to polish, there's always ways to improve. And if we actually focus on the 5 precepts, then we're going to be okay. We're going to keep refining this aspect of path, or these 3 aspects of path: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Any other comments on this really important point?
Yes, as I have lived through and for some experience being with some meditator, we all came in dukkha, and with this dukkha and suffering, so we gotta come down to try to sit down and meditation, focus on the 4 foundation of that. But I believe that the mindfulness of the action of what we're living, we should be reflected in all the action of we doing. What I said, because I have met a few person that who came suffering, when we are suffering, we sorrow, we have a lots of pain, crying and everything of that. So they still did not understand about the virtue. They do know virtues, but to me, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to say that you put sila on your body, it's just like you have a fan to protect your home, which means protect yourself. So the sorrow, of course, sometimes we did not know the action or speeches that we make to others, which harmful or hurt. So I try to tell them that release from all those things first, and then do forgive to yourself as much as we can. And then you can let go of those and you focus on a virtuous. And this is like create the foundation, and then it happening for the meditation to release quick in a way of a calmful to sit, because many of them which come to me sit, and yes, but I can see it's just the time of the wake up, they bring back the problem again. So it is how can you have or
Thank you so much, Venerable Dhammānusārī. Yes, it's such an important point, and we can really observe maybe in others and also in ourselves, it depends a bit on the person, doesn't it? Some people find it very difficult to meditate, it's a struggle, but for other people, they just want to meditate, never mind the rest. A lot of monastics have, perhaps know what I'm talking about. And so, yes, really crucial to investigate ourselves, see what we're doing, how we're behaving, and whether we're making, mistakes in terms of our precepts, and to give that the most priority indeed. I also, was when you were speaking, Venerable Dhammānusārī, it was really coming to mind for me, and I feel it was in what you were saying also, that, the different path factors really aid and support one another. So it is actually true to say that if we start with meditation, even if we're not really very interested in focusing on sila, on our conduct, through the very process of developing some degree of awareness, some degree of mindfulness, we're very much more likely to notice the pain and suffering that's caused here in our hearts when we commit harmful acts or speak in harmful ways. We're more likely to notice the impact. So there is a way, I think, in which the different aspects of path, say in this case, right mindfulness and right conduct, or the sila aspects of the path, really support one another. But we can really note, yeah, that the order here in this sutta is very clear. Give most priority to the ways we're manifesting in the world. Yeah. And then, then we're going to make some progress on the path. And also give time for meditation, friends. I mean, that's really important too. And also give time for right view. Give time to study the teachings, consider the Four Noble Truths, really investigate what the Buddha's telling us, how it is, what is the Dharma taught by the Buddha. So I'm getting a sign that there's something here in the chat to respond to. Ooh, let's have a look. See if I can find it. Yeah, Corinna, thank you, Corinna. Corinna says, recently I've been looking at sila not as an ethical thing, but more about how action agitates the mind or not. In that way, it connects to meditation for me. Excellent. Thank you for keeping an eye on the chat. Anagarika Mitakanti, that's super helpful. So this is a great comment from Corinna. Yes, I think for many of us that will resonate, that it's actually possible when we practice meditation, as I was saying, really, to notice the shake, the agitation, the quivering, the distress that we feel when we've fallen short, when we've in any way hurt or harmed ourselves or others. And it's just beautiful how our mindfulness can highlight for us this reality that, there is this law of karma, when a harmful thought or word, or even when it moves forward into action, when something harmful is done in any of these ways, suffering will follow. As it says in the Dhammapada verse, it's as surely as the cart wheels follow the hooves of the ox that's pulling the cart. And there's a sense there of, it's all rather hard work as well. There's this inexorable misery that follows when we act or speak or think unskillfully. And I'm not saying we don't necessarily have the ability to control our thinking. We may have unskillful thoughts, but most certainly we can learn to not allow them to spill over into speech or action. This much we can do, and slowly but surely we can find that our thinking becomes more conscious, and we're able to nip harmful thoughts in the bud, throw them away, treat them with the contempt they deserve, or treat them like a hot brick, chuck them away, get rid of them as quickly as possible. And, so this, as Corinna says, this understanding really can develop through our meditation practice. And it's not theoretical then, is it, friends? It's very real for us. It's right here. It's experiential. In this way, we are inevitably, as we develop mindfulness, we're inevitably going to purify our behavior as we purify our hearts. What a beautiful process it is. Any other comments, reflections at this point? So this teaching of the Buddha, little recap. So he's saying to this monk who's now really intent on learning how to practice. So the first thing you need to do is focus on your conduct, on sila, on virtue, and then on developing right view, which is precisely what the Venerable is doing, isn't he? By approaching the Buddha himself to ask for guidance, developing right view, and then to practice the Satipaṭṭhānas. Let's go back to the teaching and see what comes next. So, when your ethics are well purified and your view is correct, then you should develop the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, the 4 Satipaṭṭhānas, in 3 ways, depending upon and grounded on ethics, on virtue. That's wonderful, isn't it? Depending upon and grounded on sila. What for? So the 4 foundations, the Buddha says, meditate observing an aspect of the body internally. Kaya, kayanupassi viharati. Dwell on seeing, passi, the body in the body. Keen, aware and mindful. Atapi, keen, sampajano, satima. With a right mindfulness, with a clear comprehension, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world, free from covetousness, wanting, and displeasure, not wanting in relation to the world, free from desire and aversion in relation to the world. Or meditate observing an aspect of the body externally. Keen, aware and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. So this is actually internally ajjata and externally bahida, inside and outside. Or meditate observing an aspect of the body both internally and externally, ajjata bahida, keen, aware and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. So we have this first foundation of mindfulness, body awareness, and we have how to observe the body keenly with awareness and mindfulness, sati sampajanya, letting go of the hindrances, letting go of desire and aversion. And we're observing the body, invited by the Buddha to observe the body both internally, externally, and both internally and externally. So there we are. That's the life practice for us. We don't really need anything else, but there's more, in fact. But here we have the complete guidance how to relate to this body. So this is actually profound and full of meaning and significance for us, this passage. I'd like to invite any comments, reflections or questions at this point on this first foundation of mindfulness and how the Buddha is instructing us to observe the body. Any thoughts, anybody, about the meaning of internally, externally, and both internally and externally? How does that sit with you? What does that mean for you? How does that make sense for you? Cynthia.
Does that mean internally by itself, externally alone, and then how the two are relating to each other, how the external world is relating to my internal world? Is it the relationship?
It's a very good question. I don't know. I mean, I think it's really interesting for us to consider this. What really does it mean? There are different theories about it. Is it my body, observe my body, and then observe the bodies of others, and then observe the whole field of self and other? Does it mean observe this body inside the internal organs, what's under the skin, and then to observe this body on the surface or in relation to the sense doors? It's a good question. And I think we all really want to investigate for ourselves, what does this actually mean when I'm sitting? How do I observe the body internally and externally, and both? Maureen?
I thought about this a long time, and I thought it was like objectively and subjectively ways of looking at what's going on with your body. I don't know whether that translates for anybody else, but that's how it seemed to be for me.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Maureen. I think that really is something very helpful to contemplate. So when we're meditating, observing the body, can we see what comes to us as a subjective observation and what comes to us as objective observation? For me, the subjective sort of bleeds a little bit into the second foundation, Maureen, into Vedanupassana. How does it feel? What's the felt sense of this body? But nevertheless, that's a really good suggestion for how we can work with this. Any other thoughts from anybody? Okay. So from this foundation, some messages in the chat. Thank you, Anagarika Mitakanti. Let me have a little look at the chat. Oh, very good, Susan. Yes. Can we also use this instruction, she asks, during walking practice, please? What do you think, everybody? Yeah, Ananaya's nodding vigorously. I agree with you, Ananaya. Yes, indeed. I mean, I think walking and sitting and standing and also lying down, these 4 postures are all postures that the Buddha told us that we can use for meditation practice. So all the ways in which the body can, in a way, maintain a position for some time. And certainly walking meditation is a very important part of the practice for a lot of people. So yes, what are we doing when we're doing walking meditation? We're surely observing the body. We want to be observing the body. It may be a different, experience than sitting still. Obviously, we're moving through space. We're also having to usually keep the eyes open, advisable. And, there may be lots of things going on around us as well. And the gaze may be drawn here and there. So there's a lot more activity, one could say, when we do walking meditation. I don't know about you all, and I'd be interested to hear from people. For myself, I find that when I'm paying attention to the body, it's more, in a way, in a more coarse way. It's more obvious things that I pay attention to, such as the touch of the feet on the ground, or the air coming in, the cool air coming in and out of the body, or the stream of the air as I'm moving through space, the air that's, the breeze that the walking creates, is also an object for me. So it's much more obvious, kind of gross, one could say, experiences of body. And when sitting, of course, there's a lot more subtlety possible. At least this is my experience. Does anybody else have any comments about this? Paying attention to the body while walking. Yes.
Yes.
Anagarika.
Yes. According to my experience to walk in meditation, when you when I do the walking, you can feel that if I walk fast, I know that I walk fast. If I walk slow, I know I walk slow. But the more you concentrate on the walking, then you can feel the movement, every movement of the step. When you lift your foot up, or when you step down, you can feel you can have the feeling of the cold air or the soft of the hard of the step when you touch the surface.
Yeah. That's lovely. Thank you so much, Anagarika. It's really helpful to share from our experience, isn't it? Because everyone can resonate. And here we are. We all have these bodies. We all know what it is to walk, and hopefully we all know what it is to walk mindfully.
Yeah.
And absolutely, these are the kinds of things that are easily observed, and that's all that we need, right? Anagarika Metakanti. That's all that we need. We just need that much awareness of body. And we're here, we're present. And, you know, all the distractions, all the sensory inputs can be sort of put aside, relax, and we're focused and we're present. And so in many ways, friends, walking meditation is a lot more accessible to us, to many of us, than sitting meditation, because it keeps our attention. The hindrance of sloth and torpor doesn't get a look in, does it? When we're walking, we can't really fall asleep. I mean, it's possible, I suppose, but it would be very unlikely to happen. It's helpful when we're feeling sleepy, when we're overwhelmed by sloth and torpor. What a good idea if we're sitting to get up and start walking. And then our energy can come back up and we're here again. So this is a really helpful practice, and it's nice to talk about it and to consider it and indeed to do it. And when we do walking meditation, it's very helpful, as many of you will know, to keep the sense input to a minimum. Yeah, so we're not going for a walk exactly. We're actually choosing some area and we just delineate the area and we just walk backwards and forwards. So it's not interesting, it's not exciting. We're not looking for anything. We're focusing here. Kayanupassana, focusing on the body. So thank you everyone for these great comments. And I'm just looking, now I'm focusing on the chat, remembering that it exists, which I don't normally remember, and just see if there's anything else. Corinna, thank you. Corinna saying, internally, externally. Does it mean how the elemental qualities of the body internally are part of the elephant of the elements of the world or nature externally? And that's a beautiful point. Thank you, Corinna, because the Buddha gave many teachings on this, which are so helpful for us to appreciate this dynamic, internal, external. In the most obvious sense, internal, this one, external, out there. In this sense, when we consider the elements, the Buddha was teaching us again and again, look at the earth element here in this body, and then consider the earth element out there. Are they different? No. So the earth element, we're constantly interchanging. It's moving from internal to external, external to internal. There's a relationship. And this earth element is the same in all material things. We are all the same. Ananaya.
Well, you actually said what I was going to say. Making that point about being walking and you know, earth is earth. You have bones, your feet on the earth, the sense of your feet on the earth and walking, or if you're barefoot and you're walking on the ground, is that the elements are the same. They're absolutely the same inside the body, outside the body, and in nature. And I've done some retreat work where you do walking with an element like you do earth, you just do earth, you know, focus on earth and really sensing that in your body, and then just air and fire, etc. And you know, just have a kind of a more complete experience, or putting your attention just specifically one at a time, which can be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ananaya. This is it, isn't it? And this way of relating to body, so helpful for this very important aspect of the Buddha's teachings for liberation, the sense of self, my body. When we consider the elements, can we really consider my earth element, my water element? It's much easier to let go of that sense of the personal, holding on to anything and making it mine, something that lasts through time. Well, it's impossible to really appreciate this delusion of permanence when we consider the elements, because there's this constant change in the elemental world, in this aspect of reality, in this lens that we look through. It really helps us to appreciate anicca, change, impermanence, and therefore also anatta, not self. So this is such a helpful way of viewing the body and how we can relate to this dynamic, internal and external, or we could say subjective and objective, as you said, Maureen. In the same way, we can consider these are all concepts, but these ways of investigating Dharma really help us to land here, to come into this meditation practice, don't they?
Cynthia in the chat just asked, regarding walking meditation, we don't need a place of beauty. And actually you don't. And I've had teachers say, especially if you're doing silent retreat, is that you're walking, say you're walking down a road, or you're in a park or somewhere where you're doing your walking meditation, is that you don't want to focus on the trees and the beauty of the trees or whatever. You simply are focusing on your body walking, and it's nature. There's nature, but there's nothing specific that you're focusing on. And you can do that in your room as well as being in nature.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ananaya. That's such an important point. And thanks, Cynthia, for bringing that in. Apologies, Venerable Dhammavihārī. I've been getting your name wrong. Now my confusion is resolved. Thank you for pointing that out. And thank you for keeping an eye on the chat also, in case I forget to look, which I often do. Anybody else want to come in at this point? We've been speaking about Kayanupassana, this aspect of meditation practice, first foundation of mindfulness. Okay, friends, I think we can move on to the next.
I did.
Oh,
say
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just say that when you do the walking meditation on the first basic one, you can notice that your left foot, right foot. So you said, on the first step, you can watch on your left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. You just look at the foot, not the surrounding. So that's the first step for your walking meditation.
Thank you very much. That's a really handy tip, Venerable.
Yeah.
Focus on something simple like that, but something that brings us to this body. That's focusing in on this body. And it's really important, these points, because there is a tendency, isn't there, when we're out walking in nature to be, drawn into this or that visual object or the sounds. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we want to focus, we want to follow the Buddha's guidance and actually bring the attention here. And it's very doable, but initially we can really benefit from these kinds of ways of practice, isn't it, Venerable? Just let's focus on the feet. Bring all the attention to the feet. Which foot? Just to ask the question shows us how much attention we're paying and how aware we are of what's happening. So that's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, let's return to the sutta. And most of you will know what's coming next, but let's really feel out the teaching here, which I'll read in full. So the Buddha goes on with the advice about developing now meditation practice, or meditate observing an aspect of feelings internally, Vedana, keen, aware and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. Or meditate observing an aspect of feelings externally, keen, aware and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. Or meditate observing an aspect of feelings internally and externally, keen, aware and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. So here we have the second foundation of mindfulness. In this context, in this teaching, this venerable who's been encouraged to develop virtue, right view, and now paying attention to the body, paying attention to feelings. So it's exactly the same refrain, isn't it, in relation to this foundation also. Consider both internally and externally, ardently paying attention, sati sampajanya, with right understanding. Pay attention both internally, externally, and also both internally and externally, whatever that means for you all in relation to feelings. What do we mean when we're talking about Vedana? What is the Buddha referring to? Venerables, could any of you share thoughts on this?
The actual feelings of the body as opposed to the emotional feelings. I'm not the feeling in the knee, but as opposed to I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling, but it's the actual feelings of the body.
Thank you, Venerable Dhammavarā. That's a really important point, and it's crucial, really, to understand this foundation of mindfulness. It is that simple. It isn't about emotion. And we can get confused, can't we? Because in the English language or American language, it's the same word, covers a multitude, really, of experiences. But here and elsewhere, the Buddha is pointing to, when he speaks about Vedana, when he speaks about this foundation of mindfulness, he's pointing to the very simple reality of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling in the body. That simple. Which kind of comes before, doesn't it? Venerable Dhammavara underlies all the other aspects that we would consider under the heading of feelings. You know what I mean? Like if I have an unpleasant feeling, I could then say, oh, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling fearful, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling full of hatred. If we have pleasant feeling, we may translate joy, well-being, relaxation, happiness, and so forth. These are emotions. They will be rooted in feeling, but first there's the feeling. And so the Buddha's inviting us to really come back to a very essential aspect of our experience. Anyone else like to come in? Any other thoughts, reflections on Vedana, Vedanupassana? Do you practice this, everyone? What's it like? Ananaya.
I think the important point, along with the main point about it, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, is that feelings are not personal, which is a biggie. and a really important facet of this meditation on the body.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's based in the body, but the feelings, obviously, there's a whole thing now that we're discussing regarding Vedana.
Mm. Thank you so much, Ananea. Such an important point. Let's just investigate this one a bit more, because this is crucial. Yes, these feelings are not personal, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. It's, so helpful to recognize that some unpleasant stimulus, some painful stimulus, the feeling is unpleasant. Sort of conducive stimulus, and the feeling will be pleasant. Most of the time, actually, the feelings we experience are neutral, aren't they? They're kind of neither pleasant nor unpleasant. There's sort of not much going on, you could say. And yet, when we investigate, when we meditate, we can become very interested in the neutral, the neither strongly pleasant nor unpleasant feelings. And there's so much to investigate there. This sort of more subtle aspect of our feeling sense, the feeling tone. But yeah, Ananea, isn't it like that? It's not personal. Its cause and effect starts to come in for us. This wisdom starts to come in, that there is simply cause and effect playing out. And what we get to do then is to observe that. And as we observe these processes, impersonal, ever-changing processes, so the wisdom starts to develop. Corinna.
Thank you, Ayya. I'm not feeling well, that's why the camera's off. I was just gonna share, I think in modern language, in the American language, often I found that thinking of it as feeling as a translation for somatic experience seems to equate more equally than feeling, or even feeling tone. So it's like somatic, like grounded in the body.
Yeah.
And an aspect I like about it is that another way to think of it as not personal is I don't have a choice about it. It's not like I'm going to feel good or I'm not going to feel good here. Or it's like a biological thing.
Thank you very much, Corinna. Isn't it? Especially when we're not feeling well, we get to really deeply investigate unpleasant feeling. And it's so crucial for our well-being to not take it personally. Just to see, bodies get sick. And when bodies are sick, there's painful, unpleasant feeling. This isn't me, this isn't mine, it's not my fault, it's not really anything to do with me. But there is this ability that we have to investigate, to experience, and to also let go. And just to investigate feeling. It's so freeing, isn't it, friends, to recognize that the mind will tend to really torture us, actually. When there's unpleasant feeling, the mind will throw up all sorts of crazy concepts around my fault or someone else's fault, something wrong, and so forth. And all of this is completely unnecessary. And when we're invited, as here by the Buddha, to stay with feeling, then all of that mental clutter and torment can simply fall away. Smita.
I wanted to say that, you made a very good point that, the feeling is what we experience in the body. And I really liked how somebody said, it arises from contact. So when you reflect on all the things you contact throughout your day, I mean, we can't even imagine how many thoughts we are having, and each of that is like a contact point in and of itself. and then we have all the physical contact. So really what we're talking about is constant experience in the body of these feelings. It's amazing how many feelings we can feel throughout the day. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Samyutta. Yeah, absolutely. It's such a rich field, isn't it, friends? There's always something to observe here. If you ever feel bored, if anyone ever experiences boredom, it's hard to imagine how one could ever be bored if we simply direct our attention to feeling. It's rich. We're constantly being bombarded, and so there's endless opportunities to cultivate, to develop mindfulness here. Got something in the chat I'm seeing. Do you not have a choice to feel, from Cynthia? And that's a wonderful comment. I mean, that's a good question. Do we have a choice? No, I don't think we do. I think we're just constantly, as I say, bombarded by feeling. There may be, cases, of course, where people are overwhelmed by their experiences and want to, step away from them. And there's ways in which people will do that, which are unskillful and going against the precepts that we keep as Buddhists. So how fortunate that we have that protection. We're not going to, drink or take drugs or do anything to suppress or, in a way, remove us from our experience. How unfortunate that this happens for people sometimes. But here we are. We are very, sensitive. And, we may not have a great awareness of feeling until we meditate. For some people, it's a bit of an awakening to start meditating and to recognize that they have a body at all, because we live in our heads quite often, don't we? We're really encouraged to do that by our education systems. And so we can be quite cut off from this fullness of our experience. But when we meditate, of course, we get to wake up to this. This is a kind of awakening, to wake up to this body, to wake up to these feelings. So it may be for some of us that it's not easy to feel. It's not, there's a kind of numbness perhaps. And we have to learn how to pay attention here, to recognize that this body is so alive, so vibrant. There's always something going on. Not just this body, but every part of this body is feeling. And this we come to experience for ourselves through practice, don't we? Looking at the chat again, Anne Fuller also asked, I heard one teacher say this sutta is for psychics who can read others' minds. Interesting. Don't know about that. I don't know that people can really read one another's minds. I mean, maybe they can, and I just can't. But I think often people have the ability to understand each other very deeply through their own experience of their own process. So when we develop awareness and really wake up to this heart and mind and this body, this human experience, the more we wake up to our own experience, the more likely we are to relate, to empathize, to have compassion for, to understand the experience of others. So a lot of Dharma teachers will say, don't think I'm reading your mind. I'm not actually reading your mind, but I can just tell you what you need to know. And the reason they can see that, intuit that, is simply because their own agenda has been dropped and they can see where the other person's at. But actually reading thoughts and reading minds, I don't know. Maybe it's possible. I've no idea if this sutta is for psychics. I would say that this sutta is for everyone. This sutta is relevant for all of us, whether we're psychic or not, friends. Any other comments, questions about this aspect, this second foundation of Vedana? Venerable Dhammavihārī.
Yes. When it's about the feeling. When, for example, when you do the meditation and the feeling is feel the numbness in the body and you aware of it, it's just a feeling. But you don't put your emotion to it. It's just a feeling, and you said it's unpleasant feeling. You just aware of it. Then the numbness in your body will disappear.
Thank you. That's a lovely point. Very encouraging point. Yes, numbness is an invitation, isn't it, Venerable, to just relax and stay present and stay there and be patient and see. Not to skim over any numbness in the body, any numb areas, or even if the whole body's just not really felt. This is the case for some people, to be able to encourage people to, just don't make a problem out of that, but be willing to stay present and just see. And slowly but surely, the body will speak to us. When we've not listened to the body for a very long time, then it will kind of give up. The connection can be lost, but it's never really completely severed, is it? When we are willing to listen and wake up to the body's here for us. This is our dwelling place, and it's alive. We're part of nature, and it's a constant interchange with nature, and we can observe all of this. So numbness is a sign that mindfulness has more development. There's more potential here for awareness to grow and flourish. Thank you for that, Venerable Dhammavihārī. Anyone else like to come in before we come back? Venerable Dhammavarā.
I just want to comment on how very quickly, after you feel a feeling, there's a judgment. There's I like, I don't like, this is painful. And all it is a feeling, but we judge it. And sometimes the words we use, if we call it painful, it creates almost a solidity where we just could step back and realize it's just a feeling. So we actually sometimes create more than there actually just really is. I didn't say that very well, but.
Yeah, that's totally, a crucial point, and well said, Venerable Dhammavara. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Yes. Look at that. We can really start to investigate the mind, and we're sort of easing into the next foundation in a way, because we can really see how, indeed, Venerable, the mind will very quickly create and add more suffering. It's like the two arrows, isn't it? We're hit by an arrow, it's painful. End of story, really. There's painful or powerful, intense, we could say, to be more skillful. This is what you're pointing to, isn't it, Venerable? Let's not call it painful even. There's strong feeling, burning feeling, a sharp feeling. This is the first arrow. And the second arrow, the Buddha said, we'll be hit by an arrow and we'll create another second arrow.
Yeah, you can create hundreds of them.
Yeah, exactly, Ananaya. We can just keep creating them. Who shot the arrow? Why me? And all the embellishment around what's happening. Am I going to die? Well, we might die, but actually proliferating around these things is not helpful for us on the path. What we want to do is to come home to what's really happening. And so precisely Venerable Dhammavara is pointing to the fact that as soon as we label, as soon as we add in perception and thinking, we've in a way stepped away from the reality. The reality is just this. It's actually not something we can verbalize, is it? Feelings are feelings. They're not, we can't speak about feelings really. We can, but we're not really there, are we? As soon as we start speaking about them, as soon as we start conceptualizing. So what do we want to do in our practice is not even to label, it's just to feel. Feel what we feel. Note the quality of the feeling and leave it at that. And just keep honing in on that, because it's a field of constant change, isn't it? It keeps us sharp, it keeps us present, if we just stay with that essential experience. Thank you so much, Venerable Dhammavara. That's an excellent point for us all to consider and apply. Drop then the concepts and just apply. Okay, friends, we'll come back to the sutta now and let's take in the third foundation of mindfulness. We could spend every sutta group considering the 4 Satipaṭṭhānas, and our time would be well spent. So now the Buddha goes on, or meditate, observing an aspect of the mind internally, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. Or meditate, observing an aspect of the mind externally, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. Or meditate, observing an aspect of the mind internally and externally, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. So here we have the third foundation of mindfulness, cittanupassana, observing the mind. Observing the heart, citta means mind or heart, it's the same thing in the understanding of the Buddha and the people of his day, which is reflected in the language, Pali language. Citta, we can't say it's mind only or heart only, it's heart-mind. So the same instructions, observing both internally and externally. We could say subjectively and objectively. We could say self and other. Whatever resonates for you, with the same degree of mindfulness, the same ardent attention. Let's pay attention to the mind. And what's interesting to me, friends, is that here in this sutta, the Buddha's giving all these possibilities, isn't he? So you can observe the body, internally, externally, or both, or you can observe feelings, internally, externally, or both, or you can observe the mind. Now, this is interesting. Do we choose to observe one aspect of these Satipaṭṭhānas, or do you rather observe an interplay between them, whatever takes your attention in each given moment? Or do you open the mind to observing all these aspects of reality at the same time? How does it work for you all? Any comments on that? Any reflections, or indeed any questions? Does anybody here have a particular focus in your meditation practice, whether it be focusing on the body or focusing on feelings or focusing on the heart-mind? And what does that mean? How is that experienced? In the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta, when the Buddha speaks about cittanupassana, this observation of heart-mind, he speaks about mind states, doesn't he? Whether the mind is expansive or contracted, whether it's clear or dull. These kinds of ways of describing the mind are not quite the same as emotions, which I find quite interesting. It's a little bit more objective than that. A mind that is scattered or distracted, or a mind that is focused. In these ways, the Buddha invited us to consider citta. So it's again, it's a little bit of an encouragement to step away from the labeling of emotions and to see, perhaps in a little bit more broad sense, how is the mind? How is it? Perhaps rather than asking, how am I? Where I might answer, oh, I'm really sad, I'm really miserable, I'm really enthusiastic. Rather than asking that question, how am I? More like, how is the mind? How is it? It's just a thought. This is the kind of encouragement I receive when I read Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta. It's more like, what is the nature of the mind at this point? How is it? How is the mind as a sort of whole perceivable at this point? Ananaya.
I've been focusing on this for quite a bit now, for the last, I don't know, 6 months probably, of the mind and the chitta, really focusing on what's the state of the mind, what am I thinking, or if it's starting to get really revved up, really paying attention to that. And then there's something that, for me, that I learned a while back now, is that when the chitta is clear, it's possible to look at the body internally, externally, and particularly Vedana, but both of them. I mean, it's true for both of them. There's a sutta where the Buddha says to the mendicants, if you see something arising, if you see something that you know is attractive or historically is something you gravitate to and lean to, he said, don't pick up the sign. In other words, your mind, you have the sense of something coming up in your body, you get the feeling of it, it wants to arise. And if you are clear and you're observing, you can observe it at that point, and then you have a clear choice about whether you're going to let it continue to arise or if you can let it go. And I find that enormously helpful. So that's where, but anyway, that's how I currently am. I've been doing the don't pick up the sign for some time, but really focusing on the state, specifically the state of the chitta, and how is it clear, not clear, and how to clear it when it is cluttered or, restless.
Thank you so much, Ananaya. That's a beautiful description of practice, and I'm sure we can all benefit from hearing that. It's like also for me, what you're really pointing to here, that's so helpful, is that understanding that right view that enables letting go. So it's like, the tendency we can have, friends, isn't it, is to reify our mind states, to make it something lasting. Let's remember, when we really pay attention to the chitta, to the mind, to the heart, it's also flowing and changing. And we want to let that flow happen. We don't want to get caught up in any aspect. And I love what you said, Ananaya, this tendency we have to habitual ways of experiencing the mind, the heart, and to be willing to recognize that we don't have to step into that. We can allow letting go to happen. We can allow transformation then to happen. And in many ways, friends, I don't know about you, but I feel like the body is something, it's quite easy to consider, this isn't me, I'm just sort of in here somehow. That's the sort of sense. It's like this thing that I have to carry around. It's like, not to be disrespectful or dismissive of the body, because it is our temple. This is our opportunity, isn't it? But it's somehow easier to let go of that sense of self around body. But as we progress through these foundations of mindfulness, actually we get closer and closer to the heart of what we really hold to as me and mine. And our mind states can be very close for us. We can really identify with them. And, you know, if I have, for instance, a mind that's generally lacking energy, it's depressed, it's kind of constricted, one can really get into the sense that this is the way it always is, the way it always was, and the way it always will be. And the mind will do this. And so it's really important for us to heed these words of Ananaya, really, the sense that there is fluidity here. We can let go of even the most seemingly, tenacious states of mind. So thank you for that, Ananaya. Letting go is crucial. Any other comments, friends? Venerable Dhammānusārī.
Yeah, I am. The chitta is to me in the four foundation of the body. I think from my experience that chitta is very powerful because the mind is go in everywhere. So for me, I experience for all the Vedana, motion, everything. So I focus on the Chitana to my body and I commit it just to the body and breathe in and focus on this because it's just like the Chitta, the mind and the body, it's like they are very engaged. If I focus on that, it keeps my meditation more flow. And then after when the mind is set up, accept with the body, and the sensation coming like without knowing. But somehow, if you start to notice that, okay, it's good or I think, if you just a little cling that, know that, oh, it's good, you want to poke it back to get that point, it will never come back. So I and one more before I commit to get well on my chitta, because when I do my life experience in the Asia, I have went through the cremation of the body that closely to see it. When I see that, I feel so knowing about myself, and I see the patient pain, wouldn't have any medicine, anything like that. So since those times that I go through, I put my mind that I will try to commit myself a lot of meditation by bring my mind to my body only. And that's how it worked for me after all.
Thank you so much, Venerable
Just to
Dhammānusārī.
share my little thing, yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's such a great sharing, and sharing from deep experience of practice. And I just love this recognition that, this is working for you, and so this is the way to proceed. And let's remember, friends, the simplicity. In some ways, there's great simplicity here. We're being asked to experience what's actually happening here and now. And, these foundations are helpful ways of pointing to these are the kinds of experience we all have, we're all going to have. And you can focus on any aspect of this experience. As we see in the sutta, the Buddha's giving all the different possibilities, and we can mix and match. We can combine various aspects here. I think it's a bit like the Eightfold Path, Venerable Dhammānusārī, all the path factors helping one another And in the same way, you're really pointing to these different aspects of our experience. When we pay attention to them, we pay attention to one, and it helps us to recognize what's happening in the other aspects of experience. I pay attention to the body, and I'm also paying attention to the mind. I'm also paying attention to feelings. And we can focus on one aspect, and it will tend to sort of bring in all the others. So big appreciation for your sharing of your practice and how it manifests for you, this awareness. Now, friends, we're out of time. So what I'd like to suggest we do, we may come back to this sutta, we may not. But what I'd like to do is read through the rest of the sutta, and then we'll leave it at that. So I don't want you to be left with, half a sutta. Let's just allow me to read it through and take time to contemplate this beautiful teaching. So here we go, coming back. We can imagine, we can predict what the next teaching will be here. So allow me to just say the words and feel out the meaning here. The Buddha continues, all you can meditate, observing an aspect of Dhamma internally, keen, aware and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. Dhamma here translated as principles. Dhamma is the teaching of the Buddha. Dhamma is also reality. Dhamma also in this context could be referring to the experience of the thinking mind, the conceptual mind. These are all possibilities for you to consider. Or you can meditate, observing an aspect of Dhamma externally, keen, aware and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. Or meditate, observing an aspect of Dhamma, both internally and externally, keen, aware and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. When you develop the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation in these 3 ways, depending on and grounded on ethics, you can expect growth, not decline, in skillful qualities, whether by day or by night. And then that mendicant approved and agreed with what the Buddha said. He got up from his seat, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right before leaving. Then that mendicant, living alone, withdrawn, diligent, keen, and resolute, soon realized the supreme end of the spiritual path in this very life. He lived having achieved with his own insight the goal for which people rightly go forth from lay life to homelessness. He understood, rebirth is ended, the spiritual journey has been completed, what had to be done has been done, there is no return to any state of existence, and that mendicant became one of the perfected. Ewan. So it's a very inspiring ending to this beautiful sutta. Now, friends, we haven't discussed this enormous multifaceted aspect of the 4th Satipaṭṭhāna, the 4th foundation of mindfulness. Sorry about that. We've run out of time, but we can consider, of course, this is part of the teaching in this sutta. And through practicing the 4 Satipaṭṭhānas, grounded in and based upon virtue, upon sila, upon ethics, and with right view, this venerable was able to apply himself to the practice and attain full liberation from suffering. How inspiring.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu. So we can end, friends, by together paying homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. I'd like to invite Venerable Dhammavarā. Would you like to lead the chanting for us?
Arahant Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakhatu Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supadipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
Thank you so much, Venerables at Dhammavarī.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ayya. Ayya is plural.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.